Most men don't realize they're already bleeding by the time they brush their teeth. Not from some obvious wound, not from chaos or conflict, but from the quiet collapse that begins before the day even starts. They think they're just tired, just busy, just not morning people. But what they're really doing is surrendering, slowly, silently, to a war they never named. Zeno of Citium lost everything in a shipwreck, his cargo, his comfort, his direction. But that wasn't the end. That was the beginning. Because when the ship went under, what also drowned was illusion. The illusion of control, of certainty, of safety. And standing there on unfamiliar shores, stripped of everything he thought he needed, Zeno saw something clearer than comfort. He saw truth. That moment wasn't ruin. It was revelation. Most men never get a shipwreck big enough to wake them. So instead, they sink in pieces every morning. And it's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not even painful at first. It's subtle. You open your eyes, and without even thinking, you reach for comfort. The phone, the blanket, the idea that a few more minutes is harmless. But it's not harmless, because comfort compounds, and so does avoidance. That small delay becomes disconnection, and that disconnection becomes drift. Before your feet even hit the floor, you've already lost momentum, you've already lost presence, and eventually, you lose yourself. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, philosopher of steel, struggled to rise from bed. Not once, not twice, every day. He wrote to himself in the dark, "You were made for action, not sleep. Are you really born to feel warm under blankets?" Even the most disciplined men wake up with resistance. But here's the difference. They confront it. Most men don't. Most men confuse delay with freedom. They think not having a plan means they're liberated. But real freedom is not the absence of structure. It's the presence of purpose. The enemy isn't laziness. It never was. The real threat is erosion. Emotional erosion. The slow leak of clarity, direction, and masculine presence. It's not that you didn't wake up on time. It's that you didn't rise with intention. You didn't choose yourself first. And the world felt that. Your family felt that. Your body felt that. Even your silence felt it. This video isn't about routines. It's not about time hacks or 5-step formulas to productivity. It's about sovereignty, masculine sovereignty, the kind of power that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need permission, the kind that begins not with a schedule, but with soul command. Every morning is a test you don't remember signing up for, and most men fail it quietly. They don't fall, they fade. Not because they're weak, but because they're unarmed. This is the morning war you don't see coming, and it's time to stop pretending it isn't happening. Now, let's name the habits that are stealing your fire before the sun even rises. He doesn't hit snooze because he's tired. He hits snooze because he's avoiding something. A moment, a thought, a weight he doesn't want to carry yet. And every time he does, he tells the world, "Not yet. I'm not ready to face who I said I'd become." Most men won't say that out loud. They'll say they had a rough night, that they just need 5 more minutes. But deep down they know, the alarm isn't just a sound. It's a confrontation, a reckoning. And instead of rising, they delay. Instead of meeting themselves, they hide. That soft, instinctive reach for the button is not rest. It's retreat. There's something spiritual about those 9 minutes. A silence that exposes everything we're not ready to admit, that we don't want to be here, that we don't want to be seen, that we're afraid of the weight of our own name. And so we postpone the mirror. We avoid the man we were supposed to become today, until tomorrow, and then again, and again. Neuroscience confirms what the soul already knows. Delaying your rise fractures the mind. The brain resets its alert system every time you fall back asleep. And those fractured loops don't just dull your focus, they dull your will. You begin the day not in command, but in confusion, like a soldier entering battle without armor, without orders, without a cause. Zeno warned of this, not with alarms or clocks, but with clarity. He said the addiction to comfort is the beginning of moral decay, and the first comfort most men choose, the one they think is harmless, is to stay in bed. But nothing is harmless when it erodes who you are. What you delay today becomes what defines you tomorrow. So what do you replace it with? Not a louder alarm, not a list of tasks, but something sacred, a ritual, not of motion, but of meaning. The first thing you do should not be checking the time. It should be checking the vow. Who are you recommitting to? You. What part of yourself have you been abandoning? Rise not to meet the day, but to meet yourself, not with noise, not with speed, but with reverence. One gesture, one breath, one sentence whispered like a contract. That's how you reclaim the first moment. That's how you stop feeding the delay that devours the day. He reaches for it before his eyes are fully open, not because he needs to, but because something inside him is unsettled. He says it's to check the time, the weather, a message, but the truth is heavier than that. He's not searching for information. He's searching for orientation, for emotional stability, for something to hold on to in the quiet chaos of the morning. And that's the danger. It's not the phone, it's the pattern. A man who hasn't yet returned to himself is already offering his mind to the world. Before he's even taken a breath of his own presence, he's letting in noise, alerts, opinions, headlines, shadows. He's not grounded yet, but he's already reacting. Men who live in emotional chaos disguise their instability with information. They scroll not for knowledge, but for distraction. News becomes sedative. Messages become validation. The screen becomes a mirror that reflects nothing but absence. He's not looking at the phone. He's looking for something that feels like control. Epictetus taught that true control begins within, that impressions from the outside, if allowed in too soon, distort the clarity of the soul, and that's what's happening here. You're letting the world speak before your own spirit does. You're letting strangers, notifications, and noise determine how you feel before you've remembered who you are, and the damage is instant. The moment your fingers touch that glass, your mind shifts into a reactive state. Cortisol rises, comparison begins. You scroll past a win, a loss, a crisis, a smile, all in 10 seconds, and you think you're just catching up, but you're not. You're dissolving. Masculine stillness begins with defense. Your mind is not a hallway. It's a city, and not everyone deserves a key. Before you let the world in, build a gate. 30 minutes, no screen, no outside, no performance, just presence. That's not discipline, that's dignity. Because the man who checks his phone before he checks his breath is not free. He's not grounded, he's not even awake, he's just reacting. And every morning that starts in reaction, ends in regret. Most men wake up not with a decision, but with drift. They don't choose the day, they enter it passively, like a man being carried by a current he never meant to step into. There's no moment of direction, no vow, no conscious step forward, just motion, just noise, just the repetition of a life he no longer feels inside. And it's not because he doesn't care, it's because he's forgotten how to begin. He wakes up in silence, but not the kind that restores. It's not stillness, it's vacancy, the absence of inner voice, the absence of leadership, a silence that doesn't heal, it hollows. Zeno didn't teach with lectures, he taught with structure, with presence, with living examples of choice made visible. He believed that virtue wasn't something you thought about, it was something you practiced, consistently, with discipline and direction. And that begins not in public, but in the first private moment of the day. To rise without decision is to live without alignment. When your first act is vague, the rest follows in chaos. Your mind doesn't know what matters. Your body doesn't know what it's obeying. And eventually your spirit forgets what it stands for. That's not life. That's erosion. Most men confuse this passivity with peace. They think that because there's no noise, there's no damage. But absence isn't rest. It's retreat. You're not choosing silence. You're avoiding self-command. And over time, that avoidance becomes identity. The man who starts every day without a clear yes becomes the man who cannot say no. So shift it, not by force, not by checklist, but by vow. One sentence, one sacred act that restores your presence to yourself. Not to your job, not to your schedule, but to the man behind both. Ask yourself before anything else not what you have to do, but who you belong to today. And if the answer isn't grounded, nothing you touch will be. This isn't about success. It's about sovereignty, the silent, masculine discipline of beginning with intention. Not ambition, not anxiety, but clarity. The day doesn't start when the world calls. It starts when you respond to your own soul. Start there, or drift everywhere. He does the same things every morning. Not because they matter, but because they're familiar. The shower, the coffee, the breakfast, the clothes, the movement is there, but the meaning is gone. He's not awake. He's just repeating. And that repetition has become a sedative. There's nothing wrong with habits, but habits without presence become traps. And most men are caught in them. They move through the motions of their mornings like ghosts of themselves, bodies going forward, souls standing still. Not because they don't care, but because they stopped noticing. And when you stop noticing, you stop leading. The danger isn't in what you do. It's in how unconsciously you do it. You pour the coffee without feeling the heat. You eat without tasting. You bathe without awakening. And slowly, the morning, your sacred entry point into the day, becomes a blur. Time dissolves, intention dissolves, and eventually, you dissolve too. Zeno didn't live in comfort. He lived in awareness. His life was a rejection of the numbing routines that kept men asleep. He believed that discipline wasn't just control over actions, but presence within them. That how you do the first things reveals how you'll carry everything that follows. If the first hour is unconscious, the rest is reaction. Symbolically, it's devastating. A man who hasn't changed his ritual in 10 years is not grounded. He's trapped. He's not honoring the sacred. He's surviving the familiar. And that survival is not masculine resilience. It's quiet resignation. Rebuilding presence doesn't require dramatic change. It requires one conscious gesture, one break in the pattern, a cold shower, not for the pain, but for the wakefulness, a deep breath before the first sip of coffee, not to relax, but to return, a moment at the mirror, not to adjust appearance, but to reconnect with the man inside. You don't need new habits, you need new attention, because comfort is not the enemy, but numbness is. And if your rituals no longer remind you that you're alive, then they're not rituals, they're sedatives. And every sedative steals just a little more of your fire, every day, until you forget you ever had it. He doesn't begin the day, he reacts to it. He wakes up already behind messages, behind expectations, behind a version of himself he keeps promising to catch up to but never quite reaches. It's not that he lacks goals, it's that he starts too late, internally, emotionally, spiritually. When a man fails to lead his day, he starts running, and once you start running, everything feels like you're losing. There's no stillness, no center, just reaction, frustration, and the quiet guilt of always being late to your own life. You're not building, you're chasing. And every time you chase, you fall further behind. Not in time, but in presence. Masculine psychology isn't wired for the chaos of constant catch-up. A man can endure hardship, he can carry weight, but what he cannot endure for long is drift. The sense that he's never where he's supposed to be, that his feet move, but his soul doesn't follow. And over time, that feeling hardens into resentment, into fatigue, into distance from himself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." It wasn't a threat, it was a compass. He knew that life isn't taken from men, it's abandoned by them, slowly, thoughtlessly, morning by morning, task by task, until the day becomes a blur of obligations he never chose and identities he never claimed. That's why the morning isn't a routine, it's a battlefield. The first hour decides the rest. Win the first move, and the day follows you. Lose it, and you follow the day, not with purpose, but with exhaustion, not with direction, but with delay. A man who doesn't begin with clarity ends in confusion, and not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind you feel when you're alone at night and realize you didn't actually live today. You just chased it, and it outran you. Again, reclaiming leadership doesn't mean controlling everything. It means owning the first move. Not perfectly, not heroically, but consciously, because the man who leads the morning leads his life, and the man who chases the morning ends up chasing himself. He thinks no one sees. That because the house is quiet, his actions don't echo, that the way he moves through his morning, slouched, silent, disconnected, belongs only to him. But a man's presence speaks long before he opens his mouth, and especially to those watching with the deepest eyes. His children. What he does matters, but what he emanates matters more. Children don't just mirror behavior, they absorb emotional climate. If a man starts the day defeated, rushed or numb, that atmosphere settles into the walls, into the kitchen, into the faces of the ones he loves. He may never yell, he may never falter outwardly, but the house knows, the energy knows, the silence knows. Masculine discipline is not private, it radiates, whether he means it to or not. And that's what most men forget, that even in solitude, their rituals shape the emotional weather of the home. A distracted man teaches absence. A delayed man teaches hesitation. A reactive man teaches chaos, and none of it requires words. The neuroscience is clear. Children learn more from felt safety than spoken instruction. And if a man cannot bring centered presence into the morning, his children don't learn how to trust the world. They learn how to brace for it. That's not just failure. That's legacy in reverse. Zeno didn't write manifestos for children. He lived with clarity. He embodied discipline. His life was his teaching. And that's all any father truly has. His life, his rhythm, his first hour. You don't need to teach your children how to lead. You need to show them what stillness looks like, what dignity looks like, what it means to begin the day not in defeat, but in alignment. Even when alone, you are not alone. You are laying foundation, pattern, spirit, and the small choices, how you breathe, how you stand, what you allow into your mind. These are not just morning habits. They are echoes, carried into your lineage. Quietly, powerfully, permanently. There are no monks watching, no chants, no sacred bells. Just a man and his morning. But make no mistake, what he does with that first hour is either a ritual or a resignation. It either sanctifies the day or surrenders it. It either reclaims him or buries him a little deeper in the life he didn't choose. Zeno didn't retreat into the wilderness. He lived in the Stoa, a public place, a space of thought, movement, and quiet discipline. His philosophy wasn't isolation. It was integration. And that's the model. Your morning doesn't have to be dramatic. It has to be deliberate. You don't need a monastery. You need a posture, not just of the body, but of the soul. Most men drift into the day as if it's random, as if waking up is a casual act, as if time will forgive every delay, every numb repetition. But time remembers. It remembers who began with intention and who didn't. And over months, over years, that memory becomes a life. You don't get to skip the cost. You just delay it. That's why the morning must become sacred, not because of what it produces, but because of what it protects. When a man honors the first hour, he honors his essence. Not his to-do list, not his image, his presence. He shows up for himself before the world can ask him to become something else. And that small act, unseen by most, is a declaration. I belong to me first. The first hour is not just preparation, it's sacrifice. It's where you decide what you worship, chaos or clarity, drift or direction. And every gesture becomes a symbol. The way you breathe, the way you sit, the way you speak to your own reflection. It's not performance, it's presence. Because what you give your first hour to, you give your day to. And what you give your day to becomes your life. Your morning is not neutral. It's a gate. One side leads to noise, the other to soul. Choose carefully, because a man who treats his morning like a temple walks with peace. But a man who treats it like nothing will one day wake up and realize it became his tomb. Zeno's shipwreck wasn't the end of his journey. It was the beginning of something real, something raw, something earned. He lost everything, his wealth, his direction, the life he thought he was supposed to live. But in losing all that, he gained the one thing most men never touch, clarity. And that's what the morning offers, too. Not comfort, not productivity, clarity. But only if you're willing to meet it without illusions. Every broken morning is a smaller shipwreck, and most men ignore the debris. They step over it. They convince themselves it doesn't matter, that they'll try again tomorrow. But that debris builds up. It becomes distance, and then identity, until one day they don't even remember what it felt like to begin with fire. Seneca said, "It's not that life is short, it's that we waste much of it." And he was right. But the waste isn't loud. It's not some dramatic fall. It's quiet, subtle. 9 minutes of snooze, 15 minutes of scrolling, 45 minutes of unconscious motion, and then it's noon, and then it's next year, and then it's a man standing in the mirror, wondering where his edge went. Morning discipline isn't about being rigid. It's not about controlling every second. It's about returning to yourself, to your center, to the man beneath the weight. It's not about routines. It's about reverence. And a man who starts his day with reverence carries that tone into everything he touches. So rebuild the first hour, not with rules, but with presence, with posture, with stillness that can't be shaken by noise. Because the man who commands the morning doesn't need to dominate the world. He just needs to stand where he is, with clarity, with calm, with soul intact. And that kind of man, no alarm can break, no delay can devour, no day can take from him what he didn't offer freely. He walks into the world already whole, the I, because he remembered to meet himself before anyone else could name him. That's how you reclaim the man. By remembering, it begins in silence. It begins in stillness. It begins before the world sees you. It begins when you do.